Part 13. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 121. New World, St. Valentine's Island. This island is neither big nor small, but it is indeed very prosperous. There are crowds of people on the streets and various forces. It has to be said that the people of the New World have stronger hearts than those in the first half of the Grand Line. In the first half of the Grand Line, if those people saw pirates, especially big pirates, they must be panicking and even running away. But in the New World, this is no longer the case. It seems that everyone is okay with it. As long as you don't have big bosses like Shiji and Whitebeard, everything else seems to be fine. At least Orgrim and others feel this way. They have been on this island for a few days. Many people on the island have recognized their identities, but none of them are particularly surprised. What should I do? What should I do? Sample. Moreover, Orgrim and others also met some pirates from other new worlds, and there was no friction. The same was true for those guys. The people on the island were not surprised by them. At this time, Orgrim looked very unhappy, with a fist in his hand. A faint shockwave energy was gathering, and it looked like it might explode at any time. After Beckman noticed this, he couldn't help but smile, took Orgrim's arm and said, "That's enough for you. It's only been a few days since you've been here, and you've already wanted to hit someone several times. Why bother? No one else has provoked you. Aren't we dormant and waiting for news now?" Orgrim gritted his teeth and said, "I don't want to stay on this damn island for a second longer. I feel like I have nothing to do with you all the time. Don't you have any reaction if you're not suffering huge damage?" "What was the reaction?" Beckman asked with a smile. "What was the reaction? At that time, I was worried about the sour smell that was permeating this damn island all the time. Look at those bastards, are you showing off to me?" Orgrim cursed and pointed at a few couples in the distance. Those couples hugged each other on the street, and even kissed each other as if no one else was around, showing some shy expressions. They almost didn't. Orgrim, a single man, was so angry. In his last life, he was floating on the sea, engaged in whaling. Anyone who went to sea knew how boring it was to face the sea during those months. And many captains is unwilling to recruit female crew members, and it is not a matter of gender discrimination. It is because in many cases, on the sea, female crew members are unstable factors, because they will become a point of contention for male crew members. In boring on the sea, everyone wants to have the right to mate. This is normal. And the right to mate needs to be fought for. Since ancient times, there have been many fights for female crew members on the sea, and many times, it has even led to team disputes. Disband directly. It is normal for someone to die or something. Therefore, many captains do not recruit female crew members because they are not suitable. Instead of sowing the seeds of disputes, it is better for everyone to have sex together at sea. At least it is fair, isn't it? So Orgrim didn't have much luck with women in his previous life. In this life, let alone, even though he enjoyed it with Doflamingo for a while, he basically said goodbye to girls after going to sea. The people on this ship, they are all brawny men, okay. They look like the gay pirates. So when Orgrim looked at those bastards showing affection, he couldn't help but want to go up and give them a punch. It would be better if he could fire burn them. I have to say that Orgrim is also an old member of the FFF group. Do you think I'm just like you, so boring? Isn't it normal for young lovers to be affectionate and affectionate? And what kind of island is this? Lover's Island. Stop looking for trouble here. Go and have a drink. My hawk and the others are waiting for you, Beckman joked with a smile. Yes, St. Valentine's Island is a lover's island. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but Orgrim remembered that in his previous life, Valentine's Day in the West seemed to be called St. Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day. Damn it, From now on I will also find a super beautiful woman to be my wife, and then I will come to this island to show off and make those bastards mad. Orgrim cursed. I think there may be no one as stingy as you, Beckman said with a smile. Then Orgrim cursed and followed Beckman to the tavern. There was not much business in the tavern at noon, so Myhawk, Hank, and Nightingale gathered together. Together, they were drinking and chatting. Plank went out to investigate intelligence. In recent times, Plank and Hank have also realized their own problems. The potential of the two of them is just that, if nothing happens, the powerful devil fruits probably wouldn't grow much. And the two of them thought it would be a waste if they ate the powerful devil fruits for themselves. So they gradually stopped thinking about strength. Plank began after undergoing transformation. He now focuses on intelligence collection. Hank, on the other hand, is not very smart, but he is loyal, so he has made up his mind to be a hammer-bearing general for Mr. Hammer from now on. For them, Orgrim didn't say anything about this change. It depends on fate. Anyway, he won't treat them badly. Nightingale, didn't you say you gave up drinking? Why did you drink again? Are you so lacking in perseverance? Orgrim came over, sat down, and joked. Nightingale glanced at Orgrim, and then said, "Don't make any mistake, this is flammable oolong tea, not wine." Combustible oolong tea? Beckman glanced curiously, then looked at Nightingale and said, "Are you starting to lie to yourself? I really don't know whether to say you are strong or what. This is really tea. If you don't believe me, take a sip." Nightingale said angrily. He was talking nonsense with Beckman. Orgrim picked up a wine glass from the table, took a sip, looked at Myhawk and asked, "How is it, really not interested?" "Transparent fruit, it sounds very powerful, like sneaking into a women's bathhouse or something." Myhawk held a red wine glass in his hand and took a sip happily. Then he looked at Orgrim with great disdain and said, "Don't think that I am as dirty as you. I'm afraid if you weren't already a capable person, will you eat the transparent fruit without hesitation?" Orgrim touched his chin after hearing this, and after thinking about it carefully, this possibility is indeed possible. Although this transparent fruit is a bit embarrassing, it is in terms of strength, but if you think about it purely from a man's perspective, who can resist this temptation? That's a women's bathhouse, women's changing room, women's, ahem. What are you talking about? How could I, Orgrim, be this kind of person? Orgrim waved his hands in a pretentious manner and said, "Your eyes have given you away." Myhawk smiled and mocked. "By the way, not counting the transparent fruit, I also have an unknown devil fruit. Do you want to take a gamble?" Orgrim asked in a very naughty tone. He seemed to want to drag Myhawk into the water. "You guys are always forcing me to learn swordsmanship. Now I have found a way to counter you. Wow. I'm nagging you to eat devil fruits, huh? Let's share the blessings." Myhawk said very firmly, "Put away your damn bad taste. I have dedicated my life to swordsmanship and have no interest in devil fruits at all. What if it's a quick-cut fruit?" Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked seductively. Myhawk was stunned for a moment, as if he was thinking about the refreshing feeling, but soon he realized that the bastard Orgrim was here. "Are you kidding yourself? Roll." Myhawk cursed without hesitation. "Gee, ha 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 ha, you were definitely moved just now," Orgrim laughed and joked. Myhawk was too lazy to pay attention to the tasteless guy Orgrim, and was holding the wine glass and tasting the wine. At this moment, Gangplank suddenly pushed away. He opened the door of the tavern and hurriedly ran in and said, "Master Chui, there is news. The flying pirates have entered the Advocacy." Orgrim was stunned for a moment, then slammed the table and said, "It's finally here. It's exactly what I thought. Get ready, let's go." A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 122. In the New World, in the waters of Adver, Shiji's large fleet is flying in the sky. much faster than sailing on the sea. There are about 30 or 40 ships. This is Shiji's pirate fleet that dominates the New World. This is also the reason why he is called the Pirate Admiral. In fact, although there are 30 or 40 ships here, they don't seem to be very conspicuous, but they are all Shiji's elite troops. If he bets everything on it, his power will be even greater. But in the final analysis, these forces are all centered on the big man Shiji. Once he collapses, the entire force will disappear. On the other hand, as long as Shiji is still there, even if everyone is killed, he can still raise a team just by raising his arms on the sea. This is the advantage that comes with fame. Thinking about it, a few decades later, Shijida disappeared for more than 20 years. As soon as he appeared and offered the adopted sons wine, the pirates on the sea responded one after another. There were still countless people who thought he could become the pirate king. On the flagship of Shiji's fleet, Shiji was standing on the deck, biting a cigar in his mouth. The gentle sea breeze was blowing his clothes, making his domineering long golden hair flow in the wind. Call, Shiji took off the cigar from his mouth and slowly exhaled a stream of smoke. Then he said with a smile on his lips, "Neiman, when we take down Roger, go pick up your brothers." Listening to Shiji's words, Neiman said very excitedly, "Okay, Admiral. Once I master the ancient weapons, with my military strength and your help, this world will eventually be mine," Shiji said softly with an unruly smile on his lips. "Ha ha ha, Boss Shiji, do you want to say a few words to Roger later? Or let me just blow them up?" Sphinx asked excitedly with an evil and ferocious smile on his face. Shiki glanced at Sphinx, the irritable little Lolita, and then said with a smile, "Suppress your mood a little, let me say a few words to him first. With Roger's character, he probably won't succumb to our force, right?" Katerina Dupont crossed her arms on her chest and asked thoughtfully. Shiji was silent for a moment after hearing this. He was deeply entangled with Roger. How could he not have thought of what would happen to Roger? Respond to him? This is why he brought his large fleet with him, because he knew very well that this was to start a war. However, before that, Shiji always wanted to give it a try. What if that guy Roger changes his mind? I have to say that this is the mentality of a licking dog. Although he knows that the goddess Roger will not dump him at all, Shiji still has some illusions in his heart. I fantasize that the two of them can work together in the future or something. How will you know if you don't try? Shiji sneered. At this moment, Dr. Indigo came over with a phone bug in his hand and said, "Boss Shiji, we found Roger's Oral Jackson. Not far ahead." Yeah, when Shiji heard this, a flash of light flashed in his eyes, and then he waved his hand. The entire fleet began to accelerate and fell towards the sea. Soon, dozens of ships all landed on the sea, and they at the same time, not far in front of the sea, the Roger pirate's Oro Jackson also appeared in everyone's sight. If the Navy and Orgrim were already very clear about Shiji's purpose, then Roger can be said to be very ignorant. In fact, the intelligence capabilities of the Roger pirates are really not that good. After all, they are just a boat of people, all working together to control the intelligence of the outside world. Most of them relied on newspapers. When they landed on a certain island, they would find information dealers to buy some information. So everyone in the Roger pirates was confused about Shiji's sudden arrival. That is, Shiki. Roger held a telescope in his hand, looked at the fleet on the sea in the distance with some surprise, and murmured, "Isn't it? So to say, his big moves some time ago were all prepared for us," Riley also said, a little surprised. "Maybe it was just a chance encounter? He came down to say hello or something," Sparky Jabba comforted himself. But soon, Jabba's illusion was shattered, because Sparky's large fleet surrounded him from the left and right. As for the rear, it was left to the Roger pirates. The regiment left a hole. But Roger and others also knew that how could they outrun Shiji on the sea? If a fight really broke out, they could only break through by defeating him head-on. "What's going on with that guy?" Roger whispered in confusion. Soon, Shiji's flagship arrived on the sea not far from the Roger pirates, and the two of them could see each other clearly. "Gee ha 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 ha, Roger, haven't seen you for a while, right?" Shiji laughed very wildly and said hello to Roger. Roger also took a few steps forward, stepped on the railing of the deck, leaned forward slightly, and looked very bossy. Style. "Oh, all in all, it's been almost 2 years, right?" Cheeky Roger had a confident smile on his lips, and he also said hello to Shiji. Shiji flicked the cigarette ashes in his hand, then raised his brows and asked, "How are you doing recently?" "Thanks to you, it's very good," Roger licked his lips and said. After a short pause, Roger looked at Shiji's eyes and asked in a deep voice, "Are you here for me today?" Shiji took a deep breath from the cigar, and then slowly exhaled a puff of smoke. He was angry, and then said very calmly, "Isn't this obvious?" After hearing Shiji's accurate answer, Roger's heart sank. But he still smiled and said, "If you come and tell me what you said before, I will reject you without hesitation, Shiji." Shiji did not respond to these, but instead asked you, "Is it right to take away the historical text from Lingling?" "That's right, although it's just a rubbing." Roger didn't hide anything and answered directly. "That is to say, do you really have information about ancient weapons?" Shiji asked again. Roger smiled, but still didn't hide anything and said, "You know something about it?" As soon as Roger finished speaking, an evil smile appeared on the corner of Shiji's lips. Then Shiji opened his arms and said very unruly, "Well, Roger, even though I have said it countless times. But let me ask you again, when we were young, we did have a lot of grievances, but those are all in the past. Now, let us put these aside and discuss the future together. How about it? Do you want to join me?" Before Roger could answer anything, Shiji paused for a moment and continued, "With the power of the ancient weapons you control, coupled with my military strength, and my big plan that is brewing, as long as you and I, if we join forces, in a few years, the whole world will be at our feet. How about that?" "Roger." Roger hasn't replied yet. Bucky, the trainee crew member, has been frightened by Shiji's huge battle. His mentality has collapsed. "Captain Roger, life is the most important thing, otherwise we should follow the Golden Lion first, right?" Bucky cried. "Ha ha ha, Bucky, you have become a person who can't be killed no matter how you chop. What are you afraid of?" Shanks, on the other hand, joked with a smile. "Asshole, you have a lot of weaknesses, okay?" Bucky cursed angrily. Before Shanks could say anything, Bucky grabbed Kurikas and asked, "Mr. Ship Doctor, is the captain in bad health?" Kulokas moved his strong body and laughed. "No, I think that guy is in good condition now. Bucky's crying here is completely useless." Roger stepped on the fence and took his feet back. With a firm look in his eyes, he looked at Shiji and said, "It's a pity, Shiji. Gee, I'm not interested in ruling at all. If being a pirate means you can't do what you like, what's the point? So, no matter how many fleets you bring, Shiji, I will reject your proposal." Hiss, Shiji took a deep breath of smoke, then slowly exhaled it. Then his originally unruly eyes darkened, and he looked at Roger and said, "So, your answer is that you want me to kill you here, right?" Roger didn't waver at all when facing Shiji's gloomy gaze. Instead, he put a smile on his lips and said confidently, "No, my answer is, I will defeat you all here." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 123. As soon as Roger finished speaking, a smile appeared on the corner of Rayleigh's lips. Then he pressed a switch without hesitation, and the ramming corner of the Oro Jackson suddenly opened, revealing a cannon muzzle, and fired directly. The powerful artillery quickly hit a ship next to Shiji, exploding a plume of black smoke. This shot also started the war between the Roger pirates and the Golden Lion fleet. Ha 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 ha, this is right, SPHYNX laughed loudly. I saw this violent Lolita take off the Gatling gun on her back and took 2 steps forward, just like Roger did just now. One kick he stepped on the railing of the deck, pulled the machine gun, and pulled the trigger without hesitation. In an instant, the blast of bullets resounded. Flames were sprayed from the machine gun's muzzle, and countless bullets were directed at Oral Jackson. The ship fought over. Upon seeing this, Sparky Jabba took a step forward and took off both the small hand axes hanging on his waist. He wrapped his arms in a domineering manner. Facing the whizzing group of bullets, Jabba's hands started to dance. The 2 axes were like windmills, constantly turning, and the water couldn't splash in. They just blocked all the bullets. At the same time, Roger also took out the saber from his waist and pointed it at She from a distance. She just cut it out with one knife. God avoids. Roger shouted in a low voice. Chopping, Shiji also took off the saber from his waist and slashed it out. 2 powerful slashes collided with each other between the 2 ships, instantly tearing the sea surface apart. The next second, Shiji's large fleet all started attack mode, and countless artillery roared, covering the Oro Jackson. The Battle of Adwal officially began. At the same time, in the sea area away from Adver, it's not too far away. The Navy's fleet is also advancing rapidly here. Garp, I'll leave the other side to you. Sengoku stood on the deck of the warship at this time, holding a phone bug in his hand and said. On the other side of the phone bug, Garp said, don't worry. Soon, the Navy's fleet was divided into 2, and Garp took Kuzan and others and left from the other direction. According to the Navy's estimation, even if Shiji's large fleet has an absolute advantage, the Roger pirates it's not that easy to win. The 2 sides should start a fierce battle, which may even last 3 to 5 days. And the Roger pirates are also very likely to break out of the encirclement and start a battle at the same time, changing the battlefield from on the sea, move to the nearest island. After all, it is really stressful to go to war with Shiji on the sea. Only by doing this can the pressure be relieved. In this way, the Navy can deal with it calmly. No matter in the end Shiji who will win and lose with Roger, but the losses of both sides will definitely be considerable. When the Navy cuts in, it may be able to kill them both in one fell swoop. Therefore, the warring states' plan is to divide the troops into 2 groups, and Roger will give Garp the responsibility, and Shiji will deal with it. In this way, no matter which side loses, they can gain something and avoid wasting their time. The flaw of this tactic is that once Shiji and Roger fight, it didn't turn into that kind of tug of war in 3 or 5 days. Roger was quickly defeated or ran away. On the contrary, both sides preserved a lot of strength. Then their navy might not be able to withstand the counterattack. But no matter what the warring states period thought, I think this situation should not happen. Shiji has made so many preparations. It is impossible for Roger to run away casually, right? As for Shiji, he quickly defeated the Roger pirates. If Roger was really that easy to deal with, he wouldn't have given the Navy such a headache. Therefore, the warring states period felt that the probability of such a thing was very small, but who could have imagined that something unexpected could happen? When Admiral Sengoku led the Navy fleet to the area where the Battle of Adver broke out, he found that Roger was indeed adjusting his position as he expected, trying to break out. In fact, don't look at what Roger said just now about defeating all Shiji here. But Roger was not a fool. He had to be so stubborn. How could Shiji be defeated casually after he had made so many preparations? Therefore, Roger was just trying to increase his prestige. When the fight actually started, he was still thinking of ways to break through the encirclement. I don't know if there is the influence of Orgrim in this, but in short, the Navy did not make it during the Adwal naval battle. But this time, they seem to have caught up. "Admiral, there is a Navy fleet." After Neiman discovered the Navy, she quickly reported it to Shiji. Shiji turned his head and glanced over there, frowned and said, "Hey, the noses of these bastard guys are really sensitive." After a short pause, Shiji said, "Defeat Roger first, and then kill these bastard Marines." However, as soon as Shiji finished speaking, a golden light flashed from the Navy side. The next second, a dazzling laser beam hit Shiji's flagship. "Drink," Ni Man looked at the laser and shouted. She was already strong enough. Under this roar, her whole body expanded twice again, reaching a height of 4 or 5 meters. Her whole body was covered with blood. His muscles bulged like a little giant. With a domineering look on his weapon, he swung the huge mace at the golden laser. Boom! There was an explosion, and at the moment when the laser hit the front of Shiji's ship, Neiman brought down the mace and directly blew up the golden laser. At the same time, a naval artillery piece had also been knocked down. Just when the artillery was about to pass through the smoke produced by the laser explosion, a huge hand shot out directly from the black smoke. He firmly grasped the dark solid cannon, and then exerted force suddenly. The palm of his hand actually crushed the round cannonball into a twisted discus. The next moment, the other hand waved the mace, dispersing all the smoke that obscured the sight, and Neiman's strong figure appeared in the Navy's sight. "So scary, is this the crew of the Golden Lion?" Polisalino stood next to the Warring States General and said strangely. "Yes, the golden laser just now was shot out by this guy." "Karanda Neiman, that is Hosgarot Orgrim's sister," Genkuo said with a steady look. "Are their whole family monsters?" Polisalino joked with a smile. It can be said that Polisalino at this time is much stronger than Sakaski, and even compared with Durag, who was still in the Navy at the time, he is not even at all. It's just that Polisalino's character is a bit eccentric. Generally speaking, he is a bit like a salty fish and doesn't like to stand out. That's why Durag can overpower him and become the leader. Now Dora the bastard GE ran away, and Polisalino naturally became the strongest of this generation in the Navy. As for Sakaski, he was still slightly inferior to him, but the gap between the two was not too big. "Don't get close, just put pressure on them from a distance and entangle them," the Warring States General ordered in a deep voice. "If Roger wants to run away, the Navy will stop Roger. If Shiji takes more advantage, the Navy will help Roger take care of Shiji. Anyway, our Navy is like brown sugar. If we can't get over, but they are disgusting you all around, forcing you to fall into a more stalemate battle. As for whether Shiji will directly ascend to heaven and run away, to be honest, Warring States thinks not. After all, that guy Shiji is arrogant, he would not make such a decision until the last moment. Moreover, even if Shiji really ran away, it would not matter. Although Sengoku's tactical goal was to capture both Shiji and Roger, he also knew that this is only under ideal conditions. It cannot be that easy. If Shiji really ran away, it would be a great achievement for them to catch Roger, and that would be enough. Wait for Garp to arrive from the other side, this time, there will be a result, Warring States thought in his heart. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 124. Every time Shiji wanted to compete with Roger, the Navy always interrupted him at the right time. This made Shiji very angry. After observing the location of the naval fleet, a gloom flashed in Shiji's eyes. Then he stretched out his hand and made a few random gestures in the void. An inexplicable energy fluctuation spread out. Not long after, an island suddenly appeared above the naval fleet. The island was neither big nor small, but it was bigger than a warship anyway. Before the Navy could see clearly, the island suddenly lost control and fell from the air towards the Navy fleet. The Warring States General was stunned for a moment, and then his expression changed. It's Shiji. As soon as he finished speaking, the Warring States General turned into a golden Buddha, and then he jumped up from the deck and headed towards the island that was falling in the sky. Bien rushed forward. Buddha's wrath and King Kong conquer the demon, the warring states general roared. The next second, a very strong shockwave condensed in his golden Buddha's hand, and his palm became bigger and bigger, like a giant. Then, the powerful shockwave instantly the island was covered from bottom to top. Then, the powerful impact directly completely shattered the falling island, turning it into countless pieces of gravel and soil falling from the sky. This scene was like a meteor shower and a group of falling meteorites. Average. Many of the Navy's fleet below were stunned and panicked. After all, although the island was shattered, the falling earth and rocks that followed were also quite lethal. However, before they could panic for too long, Purisalano and the warring states general cooperated very well. Purisalano, who was standing on the deck, transformed into a golden flash, and his figure instantly appeared in the sky. Then he crossed his arms in front of his chest and his eyes became a little more serious. 8-foot Megatama, Purisalano murmured softly. As soon as he finished speaking, countless golden lights flashed out from his body and turned into dense beam particles, crushing all the rubble falling from the sky again. When the golden light curtain in the sky disappeared, Purisalano's figure had reappeared on the Navy warship. After a while, countless small gravels fell from the sky and landed on the Navy fleet. It's just that this time the stone was only the size of a fingernail. Although it also caused a lot of losses, for the Navy, this was the minimum. At the same time, the figure of the warring states general also fell on the Navy warship again. He looked towards Shiji and murmured, "He is really an impatient guy." But as soon as he finished speaking, a sea breeze blew over the sea, causing the warring states general's brows to wrinkle slightly. "This is," warring states whispered, then suddenly turned his head to look at the sea not far behind. "I saw a hurricane taking shape on the sea in the distance." The originally clear sky also changed rapidly. Dark clouds fell from the sky in a very short period of time. Lightning and thunder kept wandering in the clouds, and heavy rain followed. Hurricane, warring states was all shocked. Under such circumstances, a hurricane actually came? No. It's a storm. Purisalano whispered with a look of surprise in his eyes. The warring states general seemed to realize something and immediately ordered move the fleet closer, change the target, and focus on attacking the Golden Lion Shiji. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Before this storm and climate change occurred, to be honest, although the warring states period had a mentality of catching them all, the first target was mainly on the Roger pirates. There was no way, Shiji's large fleet was too maneuverable. Gao, if he really wanted to run away, the chance that the Navy could catch him was slim. But at this moment, a storm suddenly appeared. The storm came so fast that everyone was caught off guard. And this in such a stormy climate, Shiji's ability to flutter fruit will be completely lost, and his combat effectiveness will also drop rapidly. Compared with Roger, Shiji is significantly more threatening and harder to catch. This time, it seems that what an opportunity God gave to the Navy. Without the Piao Piao fruit, Shiji could not even stand firmly due to the side effects. Having lost most of his combat effectiveness, in the eyes of the warring states general, he was just a lamb to be slaughtered. Not now. When should he be operated on? On the other side, Shiji also noticed this change, with a look of shock, anger, and disbelief in his eyes. Impossible. Didn't those climatologists say that there won't be a storm in the Adver waters within half a month? Shiji cursed angrily. Admiral, Neiman also came to Shiji at this time. Then Neiman grabbed Shiji's arm and said, "Admiral, the storm is coming towards us, and the Navy fleet is also coming. The situation is too unfavorable for us. Now let's go, there's still time." Shiji is a rebellious and arrogant guy, so at this time, he feels more and more unwilling. He has obviously made it this far. Why? Why does God want to set off a storm? No. I am a golden lion. I will never give in to fate. Roger, Shiji threw Neiman's arm away and roared a little madly. On the other side, Roger, who had originally appeared in the navy and was surrounded by Shiji, felt a little uneasy and even felt desperate. At this time, he looked at the storm and smiled very happily. Ah ha 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 ha, Shiji, it seems that fate is on my side this time, Roger laughed. Come closer, Shiji roared like crazy. When he was angry, the helmsman of the ship did not dare to disobey Shiji's order, and the huge flagship crashed into Roger's Oral Jackson. Just between the two ships when they collided, the storm also swept over at an extremely fast speed. In an instant, the wind roared. Shiji's figure suddenly floated into the sky, out of control. Admiral, Ni Man jumped up suddenly, grabbed Shiji's arm, and then forcibly pulled Shiji back from the air. A crack of lightning flashed across, and a powerful lightning strike directly hit Shiji's rudder, blowing the rudder away. The strong wind roared, and Neiman was also blown away by the lightning strike. As soon as Shiji landed, he had no time to think and grabbed the mast to prevent himself from being carried away by the strong wind. As a result, the next second, he turned around and saw a rudder blown into two pieces flying from the air and covering his head. Before he could release his armed domination, Shiji felt a stinging pain on his head, and then blood flowed down instantly, dyeing his long golden hair red. The bright red blood stained Shiji's eyelids, making his vision turn scarlet. Roger! Shiji roared unwillingly. Goodbye Shiki, hope you can escape from the navy, Roger waved at Shiji. Then the Oro Jackson quickly evacuated the area despite the storm and huge waves. The Warring States General did not pay attention to Roger's meaning at all. The Navy's warship he was also riding the wind and waves, approaching Shiji's flagship at the fastest speed. At this time, the Warring States General's arms were shaking with excitement. What a great opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Shiji, let's see how you run away this time, the Warring States General said to himself excitedly. Turn the wheel quickly, Neiman roared in the storm. She was still holding the unconscious Sphinx in her hands. I don't know what happened to this runaway little loli. It seemed that she had just been struck by lightning while carrying a metal Gatling. Lord Neiman, the rudder of the ship was shattered by lightning and two masts were broken. We have lost power, a pirate crew member responded quickly. Damn it, Neiman was also panicking at this time. If there was no navy, Shiji would have survived until the storm left this time. But now, there is the navy. Once the navy's warship comes close, none of them could run away. Seeing the warship where the Warring States General was getting closer and closer, Neiman's eyes also showed despair, but soon, a fierceness flashed in her eyes, and she roared, "Get ready to fight and fight with the navy." However, at this moment, huge waves appeared under the unsettled sea surface, which had been swept by the waves. The next second, a narwhal hit its horn and broke through the sea surface, and then, a dark and huge the ship collided directly with the Navy warship, causing a big hole in the Navy warship and deflecting it. Gee ha 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 ha, General of the Warring States period, you are well and well, Orgrim's figure appeared in everyone's sight. He was holding the mast in one hand and a sledgehammer in the other, laughing very arrogantly. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 125. No one expected that when the Navy's warships were about to approach Shakina's badly damaged flagship. A huge dark warship that was twice as big as a warship rushed out from under the sea. This warship actually knocked the warship away in one breath, and it didn't let Sengoku and others get close. Orgrim, the Warring States General, stabilized his staggering feet, looked at Orgrim on the huge battleship with a look of fright and anger, and roared. Brother, Neiman was also surprised to see Orgrim's sudden appearance, and was extremely excited. Oh, Neiman, I haven't seen you for so many years. Big brother, I had a hard time looking for you. Gee ha 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 ha. It seems you are in trouble. I came at the right time. Orgrim looked at Niemann and laughed. He was also very excited. After so many years, he finally saw Niemann, his lost sister. Beckman held the narwhal hunting crossbow in his hand. A sudden crossbow shot at Shiji's flagship. Then a thick iron chain connected the two ships. Only then did Beckman excitedly shout, Niemann, bring your people over here. Second brother, N.I. Man greeted Beckman excitedly. Shiji was also stunned at this time. To be honest, he basically has no fighting ability now, and his head was cut open by the rudder. Originally, when the Navy came over, Shiji was also a little desperate. This time, he had failed. Not to mention that Roger had not been killed, he might also have been defeated by the Navy. But at this moment, Kazguro's Orgrim suddenly emerged from the sea. It came up from under it, bringing new hope. For a moment, Shishi seemed to understand how Orgrim felt when he appeared in the Shampoo Islands. Before Shishi could do anything, what was she thinking? Niemann rushed over, lifted Shiji on her shoulders, and said, Admiral, let's go quickly. Shiji wanted to say something, but didn't know what to say. He opened his mouth and finally fell silent. At the same time, a large number of survivors on Shiji's ship all began to follow the iron chain of the huge whaling crossbow, climbing towards Orgrim's ship. On the other side, the warring States General also saw the scene and roared, don't even think about running away. In anger, he grabbed Orgrim's ship with his big golden palm, as if he wanted to seize Orgrim's ship. And Orgrim didn't care about Shiji, and held the warhammer in his hand. With one swing, he jumped directly from the middle of the mast, swung the warhammer and hit the palm of the warring States General. The Chambord Islands are under your care, General of the Warring States. Orgrim laughed. A powerful shockwave erupted from the warhammer, directly deflecting the Warring States General's palm, causing him to miss. At this moment, a golden light flashed, and a laser beam exploded towards Orgrim's figure, and it was Porosalino who shot. With a smile on his lips, Orgrim suddenly let go of his hand in the air, causing the warhammer to fall, and at the same time, he exerted force, twisted his body, and stepped on the falling warhammer. Using this force, he adjusted his figure and punched out from the air. Then, a powerful shockwave erupted. Then he went and collided with Porosalino's golden laser in the air, exploding into a dazzling light. Gee ha 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 ha, don't underestimate me, Orgrim laughed in the air. As soon as he finished speaking, a slash suddenly appeared in everyone's sight. Then, this slash directly broke through the sea and went straight to the warship of the Warring States. Neatly the Sengoku warship was cut into two pieces from the middle. The one who took action this time was Mihawk, who had been waiting for the opportunity. The purpose of Orgrim and others' trip was to rescue Shiji, so there was no time to cause chaos with the Navy. Fighting. Mihawk also knew this very well, so he was hiding from the beginning, just waiting for an opportunity to destroy the Navy's power so that they could escape. Although his slashing attack is powerful, if Sengoku and others stand in the way, cannot destroy the warship. At that moment, the Warring States General and Porosalino both took action. Mihawk knew that Orgrim had attracted their attention, so he took action decisively. Sure enough, this knife directly chopped open the warship. With strong winds, lightning, and thunder, Orgrim threw the warhammer on the deck, and Hank quickly picked it up. His figure fell towards the sea. Just on the when he was about to fall into the sea, Orgrim grabbed the outer wheel device of the black narwhal and stabilized his body. Then he stretched his hand into the rough sea with an evil smile on his lips. With a smile, he laughed and said, let me add some spices to you. As soon as the words fell, an invisible wave of energy spread out from Orgrim's arm. Then, the already turbulent sea became even more violent. The power of the shock wave invaded the sea, and it continued. A huge wave was set off, and the huge waves quickly piled on top of each other under the control of Orgrim. In just a moment, a medium-sized tsunami was set off. The tsunami directly wrapped around the Warring States General's broken warship that was broken into two parts, and swept away into the distance. At this time, the Warring States General was also holding onto the railing on the deck with one hand, constantly stabilizing his body to prevent the violent fluctuations from throwing him into the sea. At the same time, he looked at Orgrim and the others angrily, and roared Orgrim. Orgrim was holding the outer wheel device with one hand and waving it at the Warring States General with the other hand. I saw an evil smile on his lips, and laughed. "See you next time, General of the Warring States period. Gee ha 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 ha." The Warring States General looked at Orgrim's arrogant and proud figure, feeling extremely aggrieved and almost vomiting blood from anger. If I had known there would be a storm here, if I had known that bastard Orgrim would suddenly appear from under the sea. He would never split up with Garp. The only ones here who can fight Orgrim and the others are him and Porisalino, but unfortunately, both of them are devil fruit users. Nowadays, the waves on the sea are rough and the storms are constantly destroying them. They must not land on the enemy ships casually without moving the warships over, otherwise they will be killed in the sea if they are not careful. And now, the warship was cut into pieces by that damn Mihawk, and he couldn't even chase him. If Garp were here, it wouldn't be a scene like this. That guy is not a capable person and can attack without any scruples. Just when Orgrim and others began to rescue Shiji's flagship, Shiji's fleet was also attacked by the Navy's fleet and hit by a storm, and most of it sank. The remaining pirate ships also began to disperse. It's not because they have no expectations for Shiji, but this is the tactics of the Golden Lion fleet, and it's the rules set by Shiji. When encountering this situation, it is indeed a better method to disperse and evacuate, and find opportunities to regroup. It didn't take long for Orgrim and others to get Shiji and his crew members onto their ship. Then, the stealth mode was turned on, and the huge deep-sea overlord, the Black Narwhal, gradually disappeared into the waves amid the storm. Soon, their figures disappeared. It's like they've never been here. Shiji didn't know if he felt too embarrassed, or if he suffered a heavy blow to his head and couldn't bear it anymore. Anyway, he was in a coma now. Nightingale was giving first aid to Sky. As for Orgrim and Beckman, they gathered around Karanda Neiman and asked questions. Shiji didn't bully you, right? If he treats you badly, say it now. While he is unconscious, we will take care of him. Orgrim patted Neiman on the shoulder and asked with a smile. Beckman looked at Neiman, who was 3 meters tall, and then at his normal human body, and said with some regret, "Oh, you are tall, you're so old, I can't even touch your head like I used to." Man was also very excited at this time. She grabbed the arms of Orgrim and Beckman and kept shaking them. "Brother Orgrim, brother Beckman, I almost miss you to death, we finally meet," Neiman said happily. After a slight pause, she continued, "The Admiral is very good to me and taught me a lot of skills." "Ha ha 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 ha, right? That's good, this time it's a coincidence, and we can repay the kindness that Boss Shiji did to us in the Chambord Islands." Orgrim laughed. "One more update, ha ha ha, didn't expect it, guys, look at my hard work, why don't you hand over all the monthly tickets and flowers? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 126. In the sea area of Adver in the New World, the storm has passed by this time, and it has been 2 days since Shiji launched the naval battle of Adver. The overlord of the deep sea, the Black Narwhal, this huge pitch-black warship, is currently sailing calmly on the sea. There were no traces of other ships around, and the sun high in the sky and the clear weather seemed to imply that it was a calm day. Orgrim and others were playing around on the deck at this time. Neiman and her 2 brothers hadn't seen each other for a long time, so naturally they had endless things to talk about. Some of Shiji's crew members are also communicating with Mihawk and Nightingale. Among them are Katerina Depin and Sphinx, a runaway loli who was struck by lightning. Judging from the current situation, everyone on the boat knows that Orgrim and the others are here for Shiji. In the future, everyone may be companions on the same boat. In addition, it can be considered a life-saving grace, and the conversation can be more pleasant. At this time, in a certain cabin, Shiji had already woken up. He looked at the blue sea outside the window, feeling very complicated in his heart. "Roger," Shiji murmured somewhat unwillingly. Just when Shiji was thinking about his own thoughts, a fart sound came from outside the door. Then there was a knock on the door. Shiji knew who was outside and responded. Then Dr. Indigo came in. "Admiral, those who have contacted us suffered heavy losses this time, most of them were lost in that battle," Indigo said to Shiji. Shiji nodded calmly. He knew this outcome well and had been prepared for it. Moreover, this was not the first time that Shiji had lost so many men. His journey along the way was bloody, with many successes and many failures. However, whether he succeeds or fails, every step he takes carries the shadow of death. And Shiji also understands that as long as his golden lion is still there, it's nothing. The lost strength can always be made up by spending some time. Of course, there is good news. According to my observation, Kazguro's Orgrim and his fellow Warhammer pirates intend to join your admiral's banner, Indigo said with a smile again. This sentence actually made Shiji feel a little happier. This time, although he lost a lot and was run away by Roger again. But in the end, there was still something gained, that Kazgurot Orgrim, if you can train him well, you will definitely become his right-hand man in the future. Moreover, the Warhammer pirates also have a large number of people, more than 2,000 people, and can quickly make up for some of their lost troops. Plus, there are a lot of talents inside. In addition to Orgrim, there are also Ben Beckman and Jorikol Mihawk who can play. These are all good prospects. As for other talents, Dr. Nightingale is also a top-notch doctor, and I owe it to him this time. Thinking of this, Shiji touched the rudder on his head again and asked, "Can this thing be removed?" Hearing this, Indigo shook his head and said, "Dr. Nightingale said that the operation will be successful. It's very risky. Admiral, if you think it won't have much impact, I suggest you don't take it by force." After a short pause, Indigo asked worriedly, "Admiral, how do you feel?" Shiji was silent for a moment, then shook his head and said, "It doesn't have any impact at the moment, but in the long run it will. It's hard to say. Indeed, Shiji's strength will decline in the future as if he were jumping off a cliff. The main reason is because of the rudder problem on his head. As a result, he can't even use his domineering power. But in fact, for now, the rudder on his head has basically no impact on him, and his strength has not declined. At least until the year when Roger was caught and about to be executed, Shiji still had enough strength to dare to go. He singled out the Navy headquarters. He also fought with Sengoku and Garp for 3 days and 3 nights, and demolished half of Marineford. Before that, he was still the pirate overlord on the sea. He just escaped from Impelton prison. And in the years since he broke his legs and disappeared, his strength has declined rapidly, a cliff-like decline. No impact for now? That's good. Indigo nodded. Then he thought for a moment and said, "Actually, Dr. Nightingale said that there is no safe way to solve it." Shiji turned to look at Indigo and asked, "What method?" "It is said that there is a superhuman devil fruit. Whoever eats it can become the top doctor. That is the surgery fruit. The power of this devil fruit should be able to safely solve the rudder on your head," Indigo replied quickly. Shiji didn't know anything about surgical fruits, so he asked, "Is there any news about this devil fruit user? Or is there any news about this fruit?" "No. Not yet, but we can start investigating after we go back," Indigo replied. "Well, it would be great if there is a way." Shiji nodded and said. After a slight pause, Shiji asked again, is there any news about Roger and the Navy? Indigo listened to this inquiry, shook his head directly, and said, I'm not sure, at least there is no news about Adwell in the newspapers yet, but I think it will be revealed sooner or later. If it's fast, it will be tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, if it's slow, it will be within 3 to 5 days. I never thought that Shiji, would be saved one day. Shiji smiled somewhat self-deprecatingly. Indigo asked softly, Admiral, do you want to go out and meet them? Shiji actually had mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, he did understand that it was Orgrim and others who saved him this time. But on the other hand, Shiji was an arrogant person. After going out, he felt that he didn't know what attitude to use towards Orgrim and others. So Shiki hasn't seen Orgrim in the past 2 days. It's not a problem to delay, you still need to see me. Shiji thought for a while and whispered softly. Then he stood up from his seat. In fact, except for his head, his injuries were not serious. It can even be said that he was basically uninjured. Under the leadership of Indigo next, Shiji came to the deck quickly. Then, his subordinates also quickly came together to show care for Shiji, the boss. Shiji did fail in this naval battle. However, his prestige has not been reduced at all. Because anyone with a discerning eye can see that Shiji was not defeated by Roger, nor by the Navy, but by the storm. In addition, as a pirate, failure is nothing. As long as Shiji is fine, he is still the golden lion roaring all over the world. Of course, his subordinates are also very aware of this, and no one dares to underestimate Shiji because of this. Admiral, you finally came out. I was almost worried to death. Ni Man leaned next to Shiji and said with a smile. Shiji looked at Ni Man, this little girl, couldn't help but shook his head and said, I see, in your heart right now, you are thinking of your 2 brothers. Where is the place for me as an admiral? No, the admiral is the admiral, and Neiman will never forget it. Neiman said with a smile. Shiji reached out and patted Neiman, and then said to everyone around him, okay, don't crowd around me. I have something to say with Orgrim. As soon as Shiji spoke, the others did not dare to disobey his order and dispersed one after another. Orgrim also waved his hand and asked Beckman and others to leave. Then he looked at Shiji with a smile, and Shiji was also looking at Orgrim. After a long time, Shiji seemed to have made up his mind and said, I rarely say thank you to others, but this time, thank you very much, Orgrim. When Orgrim heard this, there was a smile on his lips, and he waved his hand and said, don't be so polite, Boss Shiji. If I want to thank you, I would also like to thank you. Thank you for your kindness to us on the Shampoo Islands. Thank you for your help, you have taken great care of Neiman over the years. After a short pause, Orgrim continued, this time, I just repaid your kindness a little. 1 code equals 1 code, tell me, what do you want? Shiji waved his hand, looked at Orgrim and asked. I want to join the Sky Pirates and the Golden Lion Fleet. Orgrim said without hesitation. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 127. On the deck, Shiji was standing by the railing, looking at the calm sea, and couldn't help but whisper that day, if there hadn't been that storm, everything would have been different. Standing next to Shiki was Orgrim. Compared with Shiki's normal physique, Orgrim's figure looked very tall and strong. But this guy Shiji has a sense of domineering about him, so he was not compared to Orgrim. Listening to Shiji's words, Orgrim nodded with a smile, and said with a somewhat ethereal look, yes, everything will be different, and this world will also undergo earth-shaking changes. If there were no storms that day, even if Roger is not lost in the hands of Shiji, he will be lost in the hands of the Navy. In this way, there is naturally no Rafdru and no One Piece. There will be no great pirate era. Perhaps, the one who rules the world will be Shiji, the Golden Lion. What the future will look like is really unimaginable, but a storm changed everything after all. But it's nothing, it's just a little late. Shiji suddenly smiled again and murmured. Although he said these words very softly, to Orgrim's ears, they sounded very domineering. This contained Shiji's strong self-confidence. He was confident, even if it was nothing if he failed for the first time. It was just that his pace of dominating the world was a little slower. Orgrim glanced at Shiji, but he had some strange thoughts in his heart. If you have never met Roger, I may really believe it. I hope you will not get mad and challenge the Navy headquarters in the future, Orgrim thought in his heart. Just when Orgrim was thinking about all this, Shiji suddenly asked, "Why do you want to join me?" Before Orgrim could answer, Shiji continued. Said on this sea, there are countless people who want to join my Shiji, but 99% of them come for my Shiji's reputation. They want to gain a future with me and get my respect, shelter, but you are different. Speaking of this, Shiji turned to look at Orgrim, with a smile on his lips, and said, although we have not met a few times, and we have only known each other for a short time, but Orgrim, I pay attention. You have been with me for a long time. It can be seen that you are not a guy who is willing to be inferior to others. If you want to join me, you are not here for my reputation, you have your purpose, right? Orgrim also looked into Shiji's eyes. After being silent for a while, he grinned and said with a smile, yes, to be honest, you are not the only choice for me. At that time, Roger also invited me. If I met Whitebeard, he would probably also appreciate me. And Kaido, I can see that guy likes you very much, but you still chose me in the end. Is it because of Neiman? Shiji asked softly. At the same time, he also took out 2 cigars from his arms and motioned to Orgrim. Orgrim also took them without politeness, and the 2 of them swallowed the clouds naturally. Vomiting started. This made Shiji feel a little strange. Shiji had always commanded the entire Golden Lion fleet as a tyrant. But Orgrim said that he wanted to join his banner, but he still didn't feel down. But Shiji felt that this feeling was quite normal. This made Shiji feel a little complicated. Not just because of Neiman. Orgrim exhaled a puff of smoke and said. Why is that? Shiki asked calmly. Orgrim thought to himself, am I going to tell you that I am waiting for you to be taken to Imperial, and then I am going to take over your remnants and be a successor? The matter must not be told to Shiji. So after thinking about it, Orgrim said, I think, become your disciple. Disciple? Shiji was stunned for a moment, then laughed. Gee ha 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 ha, it's interesting. I thought of many reasons, but I didn't expect this. Shiki looked at Orgrim and laughed. Orgrim originally didn't know how Neiman was doing at Shiki's place. But in the past 2 days, Neiman also talked to him a lot. Orgrim, I also know that Shiji is really good to Neiman. It can be said that he is raising her as a daughter. In this case, let Orgrim do something particularly unfavorable to Shiji. To be honest, Orgrim also felt sorry in his heart. This guy Shiji is indeed very charming, and he has some kindness towards him. It makes Orgrim seem a little helpless now. Therefore, after thinking about it, Orgrim felt that he still had to take over, but there was no need to make it so ugly. He could use gentler methods. Have you never thought that you will fail? Orgrim suddenly asked. Shiji was silent for a moment, and then said, everyone will fail, and I am no exception. This time, won't I fail? Before Orgrim could answer, Shiji said again. But what does this mean? If you are afraid of failure and don't do what you want to do and give up your ambitions, then why are you a pirate? The most intolerable thing in this ocean is people who are afraid of failure. So, I have thought that I will fail, but I am never afraid that I will fail. Shiji said softly. Maybe the purpose is different, but I have to say that sometimes, you and Roger are really similar. Orgrim said with a smile. That bastard is the one who looks like me. Shiki first corrected Orgrim's statement, but soon he laughed again and continued, "It is precisely because of this that we can stand at the top of the sea, isn't it?" "That's right." Orgrim nodded and said. After a slight pause, Orgrim said directly, "I want to be your disciple. Maybe one day in the future, if you fail, I will take over your banner and gallop forward above the four seas. It's that simple." Shiji looked at Orgrim strangely, and then asked, "Do you think I will fail?" "No one dares to say that he will succeed, right?" Orgrim responded with a smile. "Gee, ha 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 ha, your reason is really lame. Aren't you afraid of my rejection?" Shiji laughed and said. "It doesn't matter, after all, I don't have no choice." Orgrim said very confidently. "Humph, you are really a bitch. If you want to become my disciple, then you should correct your attitude towards me, right?" Shiji sneered, looked at Orgrim with a somewhat unkind look and said. Orgrim laughed and said, "Boss Shiji, if you want to find some people who will kowtow to you, in this sea there are a lot of them, but I am the only one who comes with the idea of inheriting you, challenging you, and surpassing you." Arrogant Shiji commented to Orgrim unceremoniously. Orgrim didn't refute anything. After all, with his current position, it did seem a bit arrogant to say that he wanted to surpass Shiji. But soon, a smile of appreciation appeared on the corner of Shiji's lips, and he said, "I appreciate you more and more, Kazgarot Orgrim. You are right, in this seat here are a lot of people who want to kowtow to me, but there are not many bastards like you. So, you agreed to this?" Orgrim asked with a flash of excitement in his eyes. "Do you want to inherit me, challenge me, and surpass me?" Shiji whispered softly, and then said, "You are making a challenge to me. The proud golden lion is not afraid of this kind of challenge, right?" Orgrim asked softly. Shiji looked into Orgrim's eyes, and then said, "Yes, I, Shiji, have never been afraid of challenges. So, I agree to your request. From today on, you are my disciple, Shiji, and my only disciple. I will teach you everything I know. If you want to challenge me, just give it a try, but Orgrim, the sea is extremely cruel. If you want something, you have to pay a sufficient price. Do you understand what I mean? Of course, before I win you, before you fail, I will work for you, carry the banner of the lion disciples, and walk around the world." Orgrim agreed with a smile on his face. "Gee, ha 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 ha, you are really confident." Shiji laughed and said. "If you are not confident, how dare you say that you want to surpass you?" Orgrim also laughed and said. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 128. A New World, a secret realm that reaches into the sky, Melview. This island seems to not exist in this world, hanging alone in the sky. On the sea, few people can come here, and this is the real lair of Shiji, the Golden Lion. That's right, this island is the mysterious island with the name of Evolution Island. There is a special plant on the island, which Dr. Indigo calls it IQ. Because there is such a special plant on this island, the creatures on the island have evolved in strange ways, basically all of which are not found on the sea. At this time, Orgrim's deep-sea overlord, the Black Narwhal, was anchored in the port of the Sky Island. It had been a few days since they came to this island. Shiji also announced in public that Orgrim would become his disciple, his only disciple, and heir. It's just this inheritance, have to wait until he fails. Who knows whether he will fail or succeed? Anyway, the people who are following Shiji now will not come with the mentality that Shiji will fail. Therefore, disciples and disciples are fine. As for successors, most of Shiji's cotters regard Orgrim as a joke. In a magnificent palace, Orgrim has an independent courtyard, which was given to him by Shiki, not far from where Shiki lives. At this time, Orgrim was sitting on the grass in the courtyard, holding a book in his hand, studying something seriously. I have to say that Shiji is indeed very generous. He promised to teach Orgrim everything he knew, but he really had no intention of hiding it secretly. Perhaps it is precisely because of his unruly self-confidence that he can become a proud golden lion all over the world, right? Anyway, Orgrim still admires Shiji for this. He asked Shiji for detailed secrets on how to practice domineering, and Shiji gave it to him without hesitation. Armed and domineering, and knowledge and experience were Shiji's experiences, and even his opinions on overlords domineering. What Orgrim is studying at this time is the relevant knowledge about the advancement of armed color domineering. There is no doubt that as one of the top men standing on the sea, Shiki's armed domination has already reached the level of the so-called flowing Sakura in Wano country. I see, although many top masters have mastered this domineering advancement, under normal circumstances, wouldn't they use it? No wonder, Orgrim smacked his lips and said. Advanced armed color haki will put a greater burden on people, so under normal circumstances, strong people will not use this power casually when fighting. As long as it can break the defense, it doesn't matter what kind of domineering force you use. On the contrary, if you use this power, your endurance will be greatly reduced. You might be able to fight for 3 days, but you might start to breathe heavily in just 1 day. So it seems a little embarrassing that although this kind of power is very strong, in a close battle, it seems that whoever uses it first will lose. Therefore, many strong people will not be the first to use this power unless other factors influence it. For example, if you are in a rush for time, or if you want to have the final say, or if you are in a hurry, like Kaido, he can't be beaten. Moreover, when facing some battles, a truly strong person always leaves some spare energy for himself to deal with unexpected situations. This also made Orgrim less confused. After all, people like Garp rarely use this method. In the past, Orgrim thought it was strange that they couldn't do it, right? But when you think about it, it's impossible. Even top masters like Garp who stand on the sea can't do it, so this technique is a bit exaggerated. Now I understand, they are not shy about using this kind of power. But whether to use it or not is one thing, and whether it will be used is another matter. This kind of power still needs to be mastered. Orgrim smacked his lips and muttered to himself. In the past, Orgrim was just a country pirate from the North Sea. He had a bit of a golden finger, but along the way, he broke in randomly. Although his strength has improved, very fast, but he also has many flaws. He knows a lot of things but cannot understand them. But now, with Shiji, a big boss, teaching him behind his back, Orgrim also enjoys things that many people can't even imagine. Resources. For example, if Shiji's training manual is placed on the sea, it will probably make countless people fight for it. But Orgrim is just sitting and reading now. This is the resource advantage brought by big forces. Another example is knowledge. He is so domineering. Before, Orgrim could only cross the river by feeling the stones. Those gadgets given by Doflamingo are widely available in the New World. It can be said that everyone with some ability has a copy. Orgrim with that thing, Mew fumbled around for a while, and the increase in domineering power was only so-so. But now, with Shiji's manual, many things that he had doubted and puzzled about. Orgrim is now suddenly enlightened. Overlord color and domineering energy is exactly what I thought. It must be coordinated with experience. The more experience a person has and the more he or she grows, the stronger the overlord color and domineering energy will be, Orgrim whispered softly. Then, he thought of Shanks. This guy would be extremely domineering in the future, and he would probably be taken care of by the Roger pirates. After all, Roger's experience is indeed quite rich. As for Shanks, he started working on his ship at a very young age and received a lot of benefits. According to Shiji's evaluation of me when I had a discussion with Shiji before, my overlord color is also quite outstanding. What's the reason for this? Because I've lived 2 lifetimes, Orgrim murmured somewhat inexplicably. Just as Orgrim was thinking about these things, Beckman, Niemann, and others walked into the courtyard together. "Brother, are you reading?" Niemann walked over and asked with a smile. "Ah, it's not easy to get a chance to become stronger, so of course you have to seize the time." Orgrim responded with a smile. "Boss Shiji is really partial to you. I've wanted this courtyard for a long time, but he didn't even tell me about it." Task Tisk Sphinx, a runaway little Lolita carrying a Gatling gun, smacked her lips in envy. "If I give it to you, it will be completely destroyed in a few days, right?" Katerina Depen mocked. "Sphinx has a rather violent personality, so he is not very popular with Shiji. On the contrary, he gets along well with Niemann and has a good relationship." According to Depen, he came not long before Orgrim and the others, and had no circle under Shiji. He had planned to hug Niemann's lap before. Now, Niemann's eldest brother has joined Boss Shiji's banner, and has become a leader in one breath. The disciples and heirs of Boss Shiji. Therefore, Sphinx and Depen took advantage of their relationship with Niemann to prepare to work under Orgrim. Yes, there are factions not only in the navy. Shiji, a big boss, also has his own circle. Although Orgrim and his group have only recently joined, they are the most orthodox royal party under Shiji. In other words, Prince Sealing is more appropriate. For these people's special approach, Orgrim accepted them with goodwill. After all, this is also the beginning of his takeover of Shiji. If he wants to take over Shiji, how can he not do it? Where are the subordinates? Ha 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 ha, why are you all here? Orgrim laughed and asked. Beckman walked to the tea table in the courtyard very casually, picked up a cup of tea, moistened his throat and said, "It's been a few days since we came, you guy. If you stay here and don't go out, those bastards outside will have a lot of thoughts about you." "That's right, especially when Boss Shiji said that you are his only disciple, and you may become his heir in the future. Many guys are not convinced. They want to find an opportunity to deal with you and tell you to understand that we are the sea. Damn it, it all depends on your strength in the end," the Sphinx said carelessly, with a somewhat evil look in her eyes. Orgrim looked at her, grinned, and said evilly, "I think it's not just them, right? Do you also want to try my level?" Hearing this, an excited smile appeared on Sphinx's lips. He took off the Gatling gun and pointed it at Orgrim. "You agree?" "I agree." "Damn you, don't tear down my yard." Orgrim quickly stopped him. After chatting for a while, Orgrim smacked his lips and said, "According to what you said, it is indeed a bit inappropriate. Do those bastards think that I am afraid of them? You don't go out, right?" "It's very possible," Beckman said with a smile. "Huh, it seems like we have to teach them a lesson so that they can, I'm different from trash like them." Orgrim said coldly. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 129. Walking out of the courtyard, Orgrim chatted and laughed with the group. "Beckman, where is that guy Mihawk? Why don't you see anyone?" Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. "That guy," Beckman smacked his lips when he heard this, then shook his head and said, "I guess he's challenging Shiji, right?" Orgrim was stunned for a moment, then laughed again, and said, "He really has his style." In fact, having been here for a few days, Orgrim only played against Shiji once, which allowed Shiji to measure himself and give some special training plans. In fact, Shiski did a pretty good job of giving his suggestions on some of Orgrim's weaknesses. The final conclusion was to let Orgrim understand something in depth first, understand it for himself first, and then learn and experience it. To put it simply, Shiki thinks Orgrim is too rustic, so he should read more books first and understand what he needs to know before talking about the rest. But this guy Mihawk is different. Unlike Orgrim, my hawk has systematically learned swordsmanship and has a relatively noble background. Although I haven't inquired about it, I guess he himself has some family background, right? Therefore, he directly skipped the so-called learning stage and went straight to actual combat. Whenever he had the opportunity, he harassed Shiji, hoping to learn something powerful from Shiji. Shiki was tolerant of my hawk. After all, my hawk himself was a young man who was no worse than Orgrim. In addition, he specialized in swordsmanship, pirates, hegemony, etc., it didn't matter at all. Therefore, he poses no threat to Shiji, and Shiji is willing to teach him. Of course, when he has free time, Shiji is probably tired of my hawk as a candy by now, right? During the time he came to Melview, Orgrim also inquired a little about what Shishi was doing here. Sure enough, as he expected, the big plan that was ended by the Straw Hat Pirates more than 20 years later has actually begun. The island is divided into many dangerous areas and planted with tree protection forests called wild green. These shelter belts release tiny particles that are imperceptible to the naked eye, and the ferocious beasts on the island hate the smell. Therefore, never going near there is equivalent to being kept in captivity. Things like crazy green can also have an impact on the human body. If too many tiny particles are inhaled, green spots will appear on the body, and then the body will become stiff, eventually lose mobility, and die. Orgrim came all the way to the palace where Shiji was. As soon as he entered the door, he saw my hawk coming out of it. It seemed that he was not in good condition, he seemed to be a little exhausted, and his clothes were also somewhat damaged. After seeing Orgrim, my hawk asked in surprise, "I thought you would stay in that small courtyard for a long time." "Gee, ha 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 ha, I really didn't plan to come out originally, but some people want to sit on my head and shit." "It depends on whether he has such a big butt," Orgrim laughed and said. My hawk nodded. Of course he knew what it meant. Not only Orgrim, but also those who were closer to Orgrim would be more or less exposed. Those guys who don't like them gossip. It's just that my hawk doesn't bother to pay attention to them. "What are you, did you just spar with Boss Shiji?" Orgrim asked. My hawk nodded calmly. "How about it?" Orgrim asked with a smile. My hawk frowned slightly, thought for a moment, and said, "Powerful, he seems to have reached the point where he has lost his skills." Orgrim thought for a while, and it seemed that Shiji was really like this. In the future, when he lost his legs and used a sword to replace his legs, he would not have any fancy sword skills. It's just a chopping wave, a lion cutting 1,000 valleys. The difference is also easy to distinguish. Choppo means one chop, and Kikyang means numerous chops. But the power is very powerful. Shiji can cut off the entire island with one strike. There is no fancy thing at all, it is simple to the extreme. If you think about it carefully, it seems to be the case for both Roger and Rayleigh. For example, what's the god avoidance? Take your time, don't rush, you're still young. Orgrim patted my hawk on the shoulder and said, "Well, I'm leaving first. I have to go back and digest what I gained today and challenge him again tomorrow." My hawk nodded and said. Orgrim tugged at the corner of his mouth with some toothache after hearing this, and said, "I think one day you will anger Shiji to the point where he can't help but hack you to death. So be careful." "How come? Shouldn't the fight between swordsmen be enjoyable?" My hawk asked with some surprise. "Maybe you are the only one who thinks so," Orgrim said with a smile. Then a few people said nothing more, and Orgrim quickly walked into Shiji's hall. At this time, Shiji was sitting on his throne, standing beside him. Looking at Dr. Indigo, they seemed to be discussing something. Beckman and the others did not come in, but they seemed to hear Orgrim's footsteps. Shiji raised his head and glanced at him. Then the corners of Shiji's mouth tightened slightly. He hesitated and asked, "You don't want to fight with me, do you?" Orgrim was stunned for a moment, and then asked excitedly, "What, Boss Shiji, are you interested in fighting me today? Very good. Although Shiji said that at this stage, he needs to supplement his knowledge and understand various methods, but if he can fight against Shiji, Orgrim would still be very happy. He himself feels that only actual combat can help him master it. Seeing Orgrim's excited look, Shiji quickly waved his hand and said, "No, I'm not interested at all today. Let's wait until you complete the task I assigned you." Shiji has felt a big headache in the past 2 days. These guys in the Warhammer Pirates, well, that's right, Shiki didn't disband Orgrim's Warhammer Pirates, he even recognized them. It is equivalent to integrating the Warhammer Pirates into his Golden Lion fleet, and Orgrim is not considered a member of the basic group. But the relationship between the two goes beyond the scope of headquarters and branch. It is the relationship between master, apprentice, and successor. All in all, it was a mess, but nothing serious. Shiji felt that the 3 combatants in the Warhammer Pirates were very fanatical. That bastard Mihawk came to him to learn swordsmanship every day, and that guy Beckman was wandering around in his library like crazy during this time, and he hasn't come yet. Harass him. But Shiji always felt that one day would come. As for Orgrim, Shiji could definitely feel that every time he met him, he wanted to compete with him. What the hell kind of subordinate is this? Can you please let me be quiet for a while? Can you give me some free space? Orgrim also felt a little regretful when he heard this, and then wanted to tell Shiji that he might hurt Shiji's men. After all, Orgrim is now working under Shiji. Even if those guys provoke Orgrim, it is still necessary for Orgrim to inform Shiji before he takes action, so as not to embarrass Shiji. But before Orgrim could speak, Shiji waved and said to Orgrim, "Come here, I will show you my big plan and test you to see if you can understand what I am doing." Shiji knew that Orgrim suddenly came to him, and something must have happened, but he didn't care at all, and instead talked about his own affairs first. It can also be seen from this that although Shiji has a good attitude towards Orgrim, he still has a domineering style. But Orgrim didn't care about this. He was very upright about his current position. Moreover, of course he was also very interested in Shiji's big plan, so he nodded with a smile and walked to Shiji's side in a few steps. "Indigo, show him the stuff." Shiji waved his hand and said. Orgrim took the information file from Indigo, and then didn't care so much, and sat down next to Shiji. "Anyway, you can't sit on such a big throne alone." "No less." Shiji was stunned for a moment and glanced at Orgrim. His eyes were a little angry at first, but soon turned into a smile. "Be careful, I won't be able to tell you why later, I want you to look good." Shiji laughed and cursed. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 130. Orgrim carefully read the documents Indigo gave him. There are only some general things here, such as the stimulation and impact of the IQ potion on the ferocious beasts on the island. There are also some changes and evolutions of ferocious beasts, and the means to control these ferocious beasts. Not long after, Orgrim closed the document and frowned slightly, as if he was thinking about something. Before, Orgrim knew some of Shiki's plans, but he couldn't figure out what he was doing. What's the point of creating such a ferocious beast? Now I seem to understand a little bit. Finish watching, Shiji raised his eyebrows and asked. Orgrim nodded, then easily picked up a cigar from the table next to Shiji's throne, lit it and smoked it very naturally. Shiji looked at this bastard boy, looked like he completely regarded this place as his home, and couldn't help but curse. "You bastard, you really don't take me seriously at all, do you?" "How can it be? I respect you, Boss Shiji, in my heart," Orgrim said without hesitation. Tell me, I admire capable people, I can't explain why, I'll make you look good later." Shiji snorted coldly. Orgrim smiled, exhaled a puff of smoke and said, "What a coincidence, I am the kind of person who is very capable." Empty words. Shiji curled his lips and said. Orgrim didn't argue with him. Instead, he paused for a moment and said, I don't see anything special about this, but, I probably have an idea. Shiji raised his eyebrows and said, tell me about it. If I guess correctly, Boss Shiji, what do you want? Artificial ancient weapons, Orgrim whispered softly. After hearing Orgrim's words, Shiji was stunned for a moment, with some incredible eyes in his eyes. Then he suddenly laughed. Gee ha 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 ha, you are indeed a talent, Shiji laughed. What Indigo showed Orgrim was actually nothing particularly important or detailed. Shiji didn't expect Orgrim to really say anything. He just wanted to find something. He used this excuse to beat Orgrim and ask him to respect him more. In the end, Orgrim really gave him a surprise. From such detailed documents, he could see the final details of Shiji's big plan. The core place. Yes, Shiji's plan is to make artificial ancient weapons. I have to say that Shiji is really a very, very ambitious guy, a hero among heroes, a hero among heroes. Other pirates, such as Crocodile and others, at most, want to spend all their efforts to find ancient weapons lost in history. Shiji, he not only wants to find them, but also plans to build one himself. In his opinion, ancient weapons, those guys can come up with such a thing that can destroy the world, why can't I? Is I any worse than them? No. Therefore, Shiji, who is arrogant, is not focused on finding ancient weapons at all. On such illusory things. What he pays more attention to is building such a thing by himself. To put it more domineeringly, Shiji feels that instead of believing in those ancient weapons, it is better to believe in his own power. This is also why he can't get Luoji, one of the reasons to destroy Roger. Where did you see it? Shiji asked after laughing. Ha 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 ha, although I am a country pirate from the North Sea, to be honest, I still have a little understanding of ancient weapons. Orgrim laughed. Oh? This is a bit unexpected, Shiji said a little strangely. Well, when I was in Alabasta, I saw some documents. Orgrim made up a random reason. Shiji didn't think much and said, continue. As for ancient weapons, King Uranus is the most mysterious. I still don't know what it is, but from Pluto, I know that it is a huge ancient battleship. According to rumors, one blow can destroy an island. Orgrim said softly. Shiji nodded and motioned for Orgrim to continue. Orgrim smiled and said, these are not the point is, I see the shadow of Sea King Poseidon in your plan, Boss Shiji. Gee ha 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 ha, you are right? Shiji laughed after hearing this. As far as I know, Poseidon, the king of the sea, has the power to control the sea kings and can call the sea kings for his own use. Although for the strong, the sea kings are not powerful and they can be killed easily. It cannot be denied. What is true is that this power does have the possibility of destroying the world, Orgrim analyzed. Think about it, in the deep sea where Fishman Island is located, the super large sea kings are larger than the islands, and the ordinary sea kings are also very huge. 3 or 5 of these things are nothing, but if Sea King Poseidon gives an order to let all the sea kings in the sea attack the island, what is the concept? How many strong men can defeat Neptune? How many Neptune species are there? Their destructive power, 3 or 5 ordinary sea kings, is enough to destroy everything on a small island. It wouldn't be a joke if they all went on a rampage and destroyed the world. And what you are researching now, Boss Shiji, is to create powerful ferocious beasts that are not inferior to the Neptune class, and to control them. Once you have enough numbers and powerful enough ferocious beasts, when Orgrim said this, he glanced at Shiji, and then continued, Boss Shiji, it means that you have become a new ancient weapon, Sea King Poseidon, isn't it? An evil smile gradually appeared on the corner of Shiji's lips, and he said, gee ha 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 ha, you are right, Orgrim, I appreciate you more and more. There are countless brave men on the sea. but there are not many brave and resourceful people. You are very good. It seems that it is not a bad thing to treat you as my disciple and successor. Just as Orgrim said, this is Shiji's plan. He wanted to find ancient weapons, so he naturally had a certain understanding of ancient weapons and what Poseidon, the king of the sea, meant. Originally, he didn't think much about it. Until he discovered the island Melview. This island opened the door to a new world for Shiji. The ferocious beasts on the island could evolve to the point where they were no less powerful than the Neptune type, or even more powerful than the Neptune type. In fact, this is indeed the case. More than 20 years later, the creatures on this island are far more ferocious than the Sea Kings. Shiji believes that as long as he masters the evolution of these ferocious beasts, increases their number, and controls them, he can eventually reach the point of becoming ancient weapons. Become a new force capable of destroying the world in this era. As a result, it has strong strength, top power, and new power that is enough to destroy the world. Shiji believes that he will definitely be able to reach the top of the world by then. I have to say that if you look closely, Shiji's big plan is indeed very feasible. If he really succeeds, it doesn't seem impossible to seize world hegemony. After thinking about this, Orgrim admired Shiji even more. Indeed, Shiji was the most powerful hero and tyrant in this era. Compared with him, Whitebeard and so on are not at the same level in terms of ambition and ability to act, okay. The only pity is that this guy Shiji was tricked by Roger. In the end, before this plan could be carried out, that guy Luffy took advantage of him and dragged him into the theater version and beat him up, completely ending him. I've said it before, I'm very capable, right? Orgrim said with a chuckle. Consider you passed. Shiji looked at the stinky Orgrim and said with some displeasure. After a pause, Shiji asked again, so, what do you think of my plan? There is no doubt that it is very exciting. Compared with looking for illusory ancient weapons, making it yourself is obviously more operable, realistic, and more unexpected. Feasibility is high. Orgrim praised. You are right, but you cannot underestimate ancient weapons because of this. If you have the chance, it is best to grab them. Shiji nodded and said. Both hands must be grasped, and both hands must be strong. Orgrim nodded and said with great understanding. Come on, continue to ravage me, I can bear it, come with all the flowers and monthly tickets.